And that's
wow.
Yeah, boredom is... They get bored like you wouldn't believe. You remember when you were a teenager, when you were like 15, 16, you'd get very bored very easily. Well, they're like that all their lives, and it's a crushing boredom. It's just like... that's why they're always like having sex and stuff like that. And
I'm glad you point that out, because, Thomas, I just always thought that they had to cover up the fact of their soullessness or manipulations with drugs and alcohol, but it's actually the opposite. They just do it all for fun, or because they're bored.
Well, they're bored, and also, and that's a very good point you brought up there, Christy. They have no inner world. They don't have the inner emotional lives that we have, and the way that's expressed is when they go to bed at night. If anyone's ever been in a relationship with one of them, they fall asleep instantly. It's like a machine turning off. They don't have that moment where they process their thoughts of the day in their minds. You know, like a normal person, when you go to bed, you'll go over the things that hurt you that day or what made you feel good. They don't have that. When they go to sleep, bam, it's a machine turning off, because they have no worries or cares. And when
yesterday didn't happen.
Yeah, and when they wake up, they literally step right out of bed. It's the most strangest thing. And another thing with the sleeping is they don't dream. When you first meet them, they'll give you stories about, oh, I had this dream about us two together, and we were on a ship sailing through the Caribbean, and it was just me and you. And it sounds very phony, and it sounds very contrived and flowery, and that's because they don't know what a dream is. They're making it up. And they're making it up to show there's some kind of kismet or special bond between the two. But once you get into the relationship with them, you never hear them talking about dreaming. It's because they don't dream. They seem to dream.
Yeah, I've even asked them before, like, because dreams are very important to me, and, inner world, I just, mistakenly assume that that's what people in relationships or friendships kind of share and talk about, and you ask them, I didn't dream, I don't dream, I don't dream, or they'll get mad, why do you want to talk to me about that, or who cares how I feel, I don't know.
Yeah, and there's actually, and the reason for that is that dream imagery and and cognitive processes like that, they take part in the frontal areas of the brain, and that's also the part of the brain that deals with emotions and compassion, and it's switched off. So that's why it just happens to be in the same part of the brain.
Okay, all right, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so, and that, of course, feeds the no remorse thing, because the switch is off, and these things that maybe, from personal experience, I've had a few, maybe 1,000 or so experiences with psychopaths myself, and you're in a room, you have a situation, and literally 5 minutes later, it didn't happen, and you may be upset because they said or did something really, really hurtful, but they or even perhaps physically beat you up. 5 minutes later, they have no recollection of it. They don't know what you're talking about. You completely made it up. You're hysterical, delusional psychopath. And, it's like this never-ending cycle of no accountability, but it's kind of making sense. You're saying the brain just switches off, so perhaps they might really not even remember those occasions.
Yeah, and they do. It's beautifully segued into the next one, which is they easily take offense. Now, they easily take offense in a different way we do. They may not react at the moment. You may pass the most harmless comment. It may mean nothing, but they may take offense at it. But they may not instantaneously bring that out. What they do is they will catalog that in their brain, and they will keep it there in a database of grudges they have against you. And when the time is right, and maybe 3 years later, that thing that you didn't mean any malice in, that you may have said or done, will be pulled right out of their brains and thrown right in your face. By the same token, if they do something to really hurt you, and you're, the target of a normal person, and you're very, very upset by it, okay, they'll tell you, oh, get over yourself. Oh, you take things too seriously. They're the supreme hypocrites. They're incredibly hypocritical.
completely minimize your emotions, or oh wow.
Oh, stop being so hysterical. You know, that's a very common one. When they end a relationship with someone and the person is genuinely upset like a normal person is, they will character assassinate that person by telling everyone, oh, he's emotionally unstable. Oh, she's a bit of a she can't handle herself. She's lovesick. She can't deal with it. She's dangerous. I'm so glad I'm rid of her. Or they'll make up terrible stories. They'll say things like, oh, he was an alcoholic and he beat me up, and when the guy never laid a finger on her and probably never drank. And that's a big thing when they come out of the devaluing stage. They character assassinate the person, and this is what really hurts, because not only is the person dealing, and they'll do it in jobs as well.
It's like, wait, I'm trying to help this person or whatever, and then all of a sudden you're the demon.
Yeah,
and they've already infiltrated. They always want to meet your neighbors or get close to your friends or even your family, and they'll even like send emails or letters or phone calls and make up this big story. And, oh, you know, I think you really have to worry about your daughter or your son, or, you know, I've been doing my part, taking care of her or making sure she's, you know, fed, but she really needs a little, and like plant these little seeds so that when they finally succeed, you know, in the big kaboom comes falling, then everybody is already prepared and believes that you're the lunatic, and, you know, so they'll also minimize your problems because they don't exist, because they were already forewarned.
Oh yeah, the smear campaign will happen before you're completely removed.
Before you even know about it.
Oh yeah, and the relationship might end, and you might call up his mother and say, I want to talk to him. We got to deal with this, and the mother will say something like, oh, you never told my son that you worked, you worked as a lap dancer or something like that. You know, the kind of thing. No truth to it.
And it's like, what?
Yeah. You mean you hid from us that you were a heroin addict? And you're like,
you're running away from mental institutions and oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's
I know those people.
You're dealing with entities. And this is ultimately what they are. They're not us. They're different. So forget everything you ever knew about human decency, compassion, and kindness, because it doesn't apply to them. It's just business with them. You have to be removed, and they will destroy your character. It doesn't matter if it's a boss in a job firing you, or a personal relationship, or indeed, you know, we hear so many stories about politicians doing this.
Yeah,
it's just business. And that's another thing. You have to be very careful. Yeah, that's why they're so casual. You know, they have very low blood pressure. This is why they can pass lie detector tests. They're literally, while we're in turmoil, they don't care. And if they do, they're enjoying the experience of watching us suffer.
Oh, I totally agree, and I'm glad you brought that up. The sensitivity, their levels and stuff. There might be an offhanded remark, and a couple examples popped in my head. I was on the show. This was a couple years ago, and we were talking about the quintuplets mother and, you know, basically welfare mothers in general. And I said something like, well, if you can't afford any more babies, well, you might want to reconsider having more. And anyways, a couple days later, I got a couple notes telling me that I had to apologize to my listeners because I basically called them welfare whores. And, I mean, I don't even know who these people really were. I didn't know that they had a bunch of babies they couldn't afford, or, you know, I didn't even know. I didn't know that I supposedly committed a personal assault against, you know, two people that happened to be listening that day who thought that I was talking about them when I clearly wasn't, didn't even know anything about them, and then I became this really insensitive bad guy out of just the blue. I mean, oh my gosh. Yeah. That's just one example. I could bring up many more, but I mean, yeah, offhanded remarks. I mean, here we are talking about our personal experiences here, and, you know, somebody might take it personally. I remember there was something on the chat. We were, you know, just, you know, sometimes we get silly and talking about, cats being roadkill. And I don't even remember it was just one of those retarded, silly, infantile conversations that, we have on chat sometimes. And, I found out later that apparently I offended somebody who had a cat who just died, and it was a personal assault. I did it on purpose, specifically to hurt them. And it's like, okay, all right, I didn't even know you were there, number one.